Great. Are we recording? I like Haley. She's awesome.
She is.
Welcome to the Fruit Heights City Council meeting. It is 7 o'clock. My name is John Pullman, and we are meeting with an anchor location at 910 South Mountain Road, Fruit Heights City, Utah, 84037. Thank you for attending, visitors. We are going to start off with a pledge of allegiance. It's going to be led by Gary Anderson, and I will do the opening prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads and give you thanks for this day. We're grateful to live in this wonderful country. We're grateful for all that thou hast blessed us with and for the abundance that we have to enjoy. We ask thee at this time to help us to make good choices and to make the decisions that are in the best interest of our residents. Please help us to be wise and to be prudent with our choices. We are very grateful for this opportunity we have to serve, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
We are going to move forward with item number 1.2, which is roll call. Brandon Jones, Brandon Green.
Jones can go. Councilmember Diane Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Gary Anderson.
Here.
Councilmember Warren Sadler.
Here.
Councilmember George Ray.
Here.
Councilmember Eileen Moss.
Here.
Mayor John Pullman.
Here. Thanks, guys, for all being here. We're going to move over to 1.3, which is a city council trainer. It's going to be performed by Gary Anderson. 1 o'clock.
All right, so I figured we should go over subdivision ordinances. That's something we're doing today. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because it would take too long, but I'll just get into it. The process to enact a subdivision ordinance is a two-step process. The Planning Commission is required to prepare and recommend a proposed ordinance to the City Council. The Planning Commission must hold a public hearing on the proposed ordinance before making its final recommendation to the City Council. City Council does not have to hold a public hearing, but it may if it wishes. Notice of a public hearing must be mailed to each affected entity and posted in at least 3 public locations within the municipality or posted on the municipality's official website at least 10 calendar days before the public hearing. Notice of a public hearing must also be published in the newspaper of general circulation and on the Utah Public Notice website at least 10 calendar days before the public hearing, or it can be mailed to each property owner whose land is directly affected, to each adjacent property owner if the municipality has adopted an ordinance to that effect. The city or town council may adopt or reject the ordinance as proposed by the Planning Commission, or it may revise the recommended ordinance and then adopt it as amended. When a landowner desires to subdivide his property, he must comply with the city or town subdivision ordinance. If there is no ordinance, then he must comply with the minimum standards in the state law. State law generally requires that a plat be prepared by a licensed surveyor. The plat must have a name, set out boundaries, course, and dimensions of the land, layout, and dedicate the streets and public places to set out lots. Plat must also show necessary easements for public utilities. A city or a town can have additional requirements for the plat, but not more lenient requirements. Any plat proposed by a landowner must be approved by the supplier of culinary water and the supplier of sanitary sewer. This requirement is to protect future buyers. It ensures that whoever buys the land will be able to actually build on the property and have water and sewer available. Obviously, in an area that does not have sewer, the plat must be approved by the body that allows or approves other systems such as septic tanks. You should also notify the 911 provider for their input as well as the fire authority.
Thank you.
That was basically what I could cover in about 3 minutes.
That was exactly 3 minutes. You stopped and the alarm went off. Thank you, Gary. Any conflict of interest on tonight's agenda?
I don't believe there is, but there is potential because I do border this subdivision that we are looking at on 6.1.
Okay. At this time, we're going to move over to item number 3, which is a public comment time. Does anyone have anything they'd like to present to the City Council tonight? Not seeing or hearing any, we are going to go over to item number 4, which is a public hearing. Fruit Heights City Council will hear public comments on the following. Oh, public hearing. My bad. I should have taken that out. Item number 6.1, review, discuss, approve, deny the final plat approval for the Rockloft Ridge Estates. Before we move over to Brandon and crew, I'm going to have Diane make mention of anything that was discussed at the Planning Commission, and if there's anything that we should be aware of that the Planning Commission may comment on.
Well, just basically that they were fine with approving phase 1 of the development agreement. And according to the staff report, they looked through that. So that's basically what they were asking us to do.
Great.
So, question for you. On our agenda, it says final plat approval. That sounds pretty final to me. That doesn't sound like phase
Like
1.
phase 1.
That sounds like the entire
So
thing.
I probably should have added that into that because it's not the final part,
It's not the final plat?
right?
No, it is.
For the phase 1, right?
It's not what it says.
Well, but it doesn't say phase 1.
Brandon, do you want to kick things off for us?
Which one?
You, goofball.
Well, I'm going to actually turn it over to Brandon Jones to have to start the discussion.
Great, thank you.
Here, take this.
Okay. So for clarity, we're talking about what we're calling phase 1, which is 35 lots. The lots that are proposed in phase 1 are the ones that don't have very many geotechnical concerns. The developer wanted to move forward with these lots so that they could get construction of the roads going. So that's what you have before you, and the plat is consistent with those 35 lots. And the one clarification to add is that part of phase 1 is the connection of Rockloft Drive, which is the upper main road that kind of runs north and south. And that needs to connect to 1800 East, which is considered part of phase 1. However, there are some outstanding approvals that are still needed from outside entities, as well as the city's responsibility to get the property swapped between the city and Hayes Creek in order to make that crossing. That was part of the development agreement, so that's our responsibility. And so rather than to hold up everything else that is ready, which is the majority, staff is comfortable recommending that the approval would be given for phase 1. What we would do in order to make sure that the city is covered is that the plat would not be recorded until approval of everything associated with the Bear Creek crossing is approved. And so You can see on the staff report, if you look at item number 5, four references, the Bear Creek Crossing, and 5 lists all of the things that would need to be done as part of that approval before the plat can be recorded. So this would allow the developer to get going on construction while they're working on getting those remaining items approved. But it would protect the city, because as long as the plat is not recorded, they don't have the ability to sell anything. So that's kind of the card we hold. And the developer is fine proceeding in that direction. So there's that. There are a couple of minor comments still on the plat and improvement plans that I have put together and will send to the developer to address before we hold a pre-construction meeting, and they can start on construction. But outside of that, I think staff is unanimous in our recommendation to approve this phase 1 as you have before you.
Can I ask a question?
You bet.
I've been doing this a little too long. And so I can't remember where laws change, but I've got 2 concerns. One of them is typically when there are still things outstanding on the plat, we do a preliminary plat approval, not a final plat approval. And the other one is that subdivisions have typically been adopted by ordinance. We do not have an ordinance before us tonight.
By ordinance or
We've
resolution?
adopted a lot of subdivisions without ordinances.
What's that?
We've adopted a lot of.
What does our city ordinance say? We have a Title 10, what does it
I
say?
don't think it says it has to be done by ordinance.
Well, it's so difficult for us nowadays to look this up because it's hard to find it online, different things. I would like to know what our ordinance says. If
I'll
it
look
has
at
to
it
be
here in just a second, but
by Title 10.
I can't remember a subdivision that we have.
So this, the League of Cities and Towns sort of talks a little bit about that. They basically say that if you have a lot that has fewer than 10 lots, that you don't have to have the ordinance. This is clear.
Are you sure ordinance, because ordinance is law, so.
Right.
I don't know that we'd be adopting a subdivision by law. You would do it by resolution perhaps.
They say it's referred
But
to as a minor.
ultimately, whatever our
I'll look it up.
code states is what we need to follow.
I'll look it up.
Well,
I know
it looks like Brandon's working
I know
on it right now.
Process you have done.
It's, I mean, if somebody wants to pull a green book and look in chapter 10. I can do that.
Brandon, do we have, let me look that up. We have a map of that's what, yeah.
And so was there anyone that attended the planning commission public hearing?
So was notice sent to homeowners of a public hearing?
Sorry, say that.
Was notice sent to homeowners of a public hearing? Like adjacent homeowners?
No, there was no public hearing on this at the last planning commission meeting.
Has there ever been a public hearing at
Yes,
the planning
we probably
commission?
got a dozen. or
On the
more.
plat, not on the development agreement. With the plat, has the planning commission with the plat before them held a public hearing?
Officially or unofficially?
Officially, as noticed in by the notice laws of the state of Utah.
I doubt that, I doubt it.
So, because in our 2020, duties and powers and duties book, it states that while the city council does not have to hold a public hearing, the planning commission does. And it must be on the municipality's official website at least 10 days before the public hearing.
I'm gonna look it up and see what it says in our code.
So what it's saying in our powers and duties book is we can enact a stricter ordinance than what it is called for in state law, but we cannot do anything easier than what is in state law. And what it is saying in there is that the planning commission must hold a public hearing on the proposed ordinance, and the ordinance is the subdivision, enacting a subdivision, before making its final recommendation to the city council.
These are issues that we should be discussing before a meeting like this. We should not be having this conversation in this meeting. We should.
But then
should-
we need to have this, we need to have this information, but then before a day before. Because it's pretty hard to read this at 5 o'clock at night and like call everybody.
Is that the first you read it?
This was in Teams 6 days ago. This was in Teams 6 days ago.
It's been in there for a while.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's been, but
If I look, and Brandon, you and I talked about trying to see that the planning commission notes, and I think you were trying to put some of that in there, but I don't see any records for April, May, June on our ability to look at the planning commission to see what's been going on in the planning commission. Diane, did the planning commission hold a public hearing on this?
Not for that, we did a public hearing on the rezone.
And a public hearing and on the development agreements, I grant that.
Right.
But the public hearing should be held at the planning commission level on the plat, with them having the chance to look at every single one of the little maps. So I don't see how we're ready to go forward with this.
Let's give you another minute here. Reviewing our standards.
Does anybody have any questions just about the development in general that I can answer?
I think you answered this, but you're saying the phase 1 does include crossover into 1800 North.
It does. The plat
You're
design,
looking at phase 1 right there.
yes.
Yeah, and it kind of on the stuff that I'm looking at, it's not super clear that the
So
crossover includes phase 1.
So the improvement plans show the connection, the actual road connection, but since
It doesn't show it in dark. It shows it as grayed out. Typically means that it's not part of that phase, and that's what it shows.
in the improvement plans,
In the things that have been in my Dropbox, which include your comments to Reed and Associates, and it has that portion grayed out. It's not clear that it's part of phase 1 development.
well, I don't know exactly what, do you have a sheet number that you can tell me that you're looking at?
So it's the one that has your comments. It's 27 total sheets. It looks like it's number 1. It has your comments on it. I have also the one that is the project narrative notes revisions, Rock Loft Ridge improvement plans. I also have the same version without remarks, and it's still grayed out. The
So
crossover is grayed out.
If you want to look at sheet 9, sheet 9 shows the construction of the road.
Yeah, all I'm trying to do is just verify that's part of the.
Yes. So the construction, I guess what I'm trying to point out is the construction of the road is included in the construction plans.
Okay.
But the plat cannot show that connection because they don't own the property.
Oh, that's why it's grayed out.
Yes.
Okay, that's it. Thank you for the explanation. That's what I'm
Right.
trying to understand is I'm looking at this and I'm like, why is it grayed out? Why is it not part of the phase 1? Seems like it should be.
Right. Yes, it should be.
That will come as a separate plat,
Okay.
with a separate dedication that, Page Creek's gonna have to sign. And we're actually, Steve was meeting with Adam with the public, with Davis County Flood Control. And we've been working with them for about, last 60,
90 days on kind of the final designs on the kind of the river bottom, and we're very close on that. So that's why since it still hasn't been acquired, we're sorting out some issues. We proposed that be on a separate plat, but that we can't move forward to sell anything on phase one until that plat's done and all the improvements associated are installed.
Thank you, that's.
So your approval, whenever you're comfortable making that motion, would, if you make it subject to the comments in the staff report, that will make sure that is taken care of, that the plat cannot be recorded until they get approval of everything for Bear Creek.
Yeah, and I thought that's what you said. I just wanted to double confirm it because I'm almost sort of seeing conflicting information on the writing.
Right. Well, there's a ton of information on this, and so I can see how, it might be a little confusing depending on where you're looking.
So looking back at some of the notes, it says, did the city council do the preliminary plat approval then in February? Was that
The city council or the
well, whoever does the preliminary,
That was the planning.
planning commission?
that was the planning commission.
Yes.
Okay.
Was
Okay, let me, I've read this now, this is
Okay.
in section,
Okay.
chapter 3, this is approval process of plat requirements.
Okay, thank you.
This is what Davis, or not Davis County, this is what Fruit Heights City has in writing.
Thank you.
There is nothing in this approval process that says that the planning commission is going to hold a public hearing on subdivision. There is nothing in this process that says the city council is going to hold a public hearing on the subdivision. There is nothing in this process that says we're going to adopt the subdivision by ordinance. Nothing.
Okay.
If you feel like that that this code is written improperly, then we can address that after this time with the city attorney, and we can update and do things. But we have to abide by how our code is written. And now that being said, never in the history of the city have we gone through as much.
I know that, this
But
is, I'm not questioning
This is
that.
a lot bigger subdivision than we've done.
Yeah,
Yeah, right, so like,
we've had multiple public
But the other
comment
problem,
periods in meetings with this.
here's the page.
But we are not required to hold a specific notice public hearing on subdivision in our code.
so,
Either the planning
The
commission.
only public hearing we're required to hold is the rezone.
And we did do that. We did do the rezone, which our code specifically states.
So my question is, in here, where it talks about,
Will you read that again, please?
basically, looking at it, and it says, if a municipality, well, we do have a subdivision code, the provisions of the state code regarding subdivisions will become the regulations. This situation, okay, so that means everybody has it one way or the other. Okay, but
basically
I'm
says you
looking
can't
for the
have
part that
less.
said that we have to abide what the state code is at a minimum. Okay. But, so in the state code, it says, the process to enact a subdivision ordinance is a two-step process. Okay, if there, so what he's got is, if there is, that's what if there's an ordinance, but it says you can't do anything
but it
less.
also says, it just says, you cannot do anything less
You
than the
cannot do
state.
anything less than what state law says. And state law is saying the planning commission must hold a public hearing on the proposed ordinance, and it's calling a subdivision process an ordinance before making its final recommendation to the council. The city council does not have to hold a public hearing, but it may wishes.
So, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Actually, I am going to interrupt. How to show chapter 3. Approval process for plat requirements.
But that's our city,
That's our city.
yes.
So I'm going to go and talk directly about what you're talking about. And the ordinance of rezoning that land was held and was enacted via ordinance. The planning commission held their public hearing for that ordinance For that rezone,
For the reason.
For the rezone.
Yes.
City,
Yes.
city council held 2 public hearings for the
Yes.
rezone,
Yes,
and that was passed
yes,
by ordinance.
yes,
The preliminary plat was performed and was accepted by the planning commission, which chapter 3 states it has to happen
Yes.
that way. We don't have, as a city council, we don't have the authority over to trump their preliminary plat.
Okay.
Chapter 3 also states that the final plat recording, which they're not asking for tonight, they're asking for phase 1, so no cell can be done. In order for that final plat and to have it recorded, then we need to approve it. But there's nothing about a public hearing, there's nothing in our ordinances of an ordinance.
can I read to you from Powers and Duties?
Yep.
It says,
So before you read that, can I ask you one question?
yes.
So if we haven't ever done it, because our ordinance,
But look, here's what it says. A city or town can have additional requirements for a plat, but not more lenient requirements. Any plat proposed must, you have to have it. So what it's saying is state law sometime in the last 25 years since that was updated has said that we cannot do anything more lenient than what is required by state law. State law is requiring us, I believe, on the plat, it's not saying on the rezone, it's not saying in the other things. It's here.
When you say I believe, what does I believe mean?
I don't know a city that approves plats by ordinance.
Okay. So what does this mean in our powers and duties book?
I'll have to ask the city attorney.
I mean, that powers and duties book's not the law.
It's true, it quotes the law.
I agree with you about what you said about we can't be less lenient. But we have never approved the subdivision by ordinance.
And does it mean being
I've
less
done
lenient?
work in a lot of cities and we've never done it.
Does it mean that we're less lenient if we don't have a public hearing? That seems to be the question, right?
Well, that's what we're trying to
That's what we're
discuss.
trying to
However,
do.
however, it does suggest that
so
in the powers and duties. Now, whether that's legal
Yeah.
or not, it's probably up for debate.
We could get answers to what the state law says or doesn't say.
Oh,
We
yeah.
should get that.
Let's on.
hold on, actually, I can interrupt you because Brandon Jones has something to say.
I was just gonna make a suggestion for your consideration. If there's concerns about the plat itself, I mean, obviously there's concerns about our process and whether or not we've followed it regarding the plat. If you're comfortable allowing construction to begin, then perhaps you would be okay to approve the improvement plans, subject to them getting, all of the final approvals, public hearings, or whatever else is determined that needs to happen. Because they're not going to be recording that final plat anyway until they get everything else done with the Bear Creek crossing. So they could certainly bring that back at another time. But I think their hope is to be able to begin construction. It's related to the plat, and I don't know if you feel uncomfortable
So
doing that.
it's almost like a preliminary approval.
Well, no, I wouldn't call it that, because it's final approval on the construction of the improvement plans. The construction plans would be approved to go start building everything outside of the Bear Creek crossing.
So let me actually, let's tap it right real quick. Let's have a discussion about the plat itself. Is that okay?
Yes.
Do we have any questions, any issues, any concerns about the plat itself? I'm opening that up for any questions.
I don't have any comments or concerns because it's not in my backyard. We'll sweat that out too much. But I do remember being in a council meeting when I was running and watching the process and just being really, really new to this. And I remember people being really adamant, neighbors saying that they had lots of questions and concerns about it. And I remember the council or everybody's saying, hey, this is a preliminary plat approval. This is not a final approval. You can make all the comments you want on the final plat approval when it comes out. That room is full. This room is empty. And I will approve it to move forward with plat approval just because I want to move things forward and I want everybody to work good. But I do want to recognize that there was a big push to tell the neighbors that you'll get final plat approval conversations when that time comes, and this room is empty.
That is part of my concern.
I'm actually going to interrupt you real quick. So back in November, when that was happening, and you were campaigning, September, October, November, that was the first time, because they had been working, planning commission had been working for 6 years now with no one's lots. I was in the same boat with you, and since then, there has been, we held 2 public hearings as a city council. Planning commission has held a public hearing, and Brandon and I have had 4, 5 cottage meetings explaining things. And most of the cottage meetings were to just talk about the whole process. I'm neither on the fence, neither here nor there, but I'm just going to state the fact that we have tried to get as much information out there as we can, and no decisions have been made behind closed doors. And I think it's been a very deliberate process of making sure that every decision has been made with open doors.
But if we do approve that, we do have to amend it and not indicate that this is the actual final plat approval.
Right.
Because that, George is correct in saying that we did offer the citizens an opportunity before the final plat approval to have comment and input.
Let me comment on that.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you one before you get into this. So we've held 2 public hearings in city council meetings.
But they weren't plat
But they
approval.
weren't
They were
plat
preliminary.
approval.
Right.
They weren't final
Oh,
plat.
excuse me. No. There were results.
Right.
Right. They had nothing to do with the plots.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a little different.
Gary, what were you going to say? Gary?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that that is kind of my, little bit along the same lines, is that a lot of people seem to wanna have just one look. Maybe it's just so they feel like they're part of the process, I don't know, but.
So do you have a question or concern with, or an issue with the plat that's in front of you?
Not necessarily, but I wanna make sure it's done right. I wanna make sure that people have a chance to speak their piece and not come back and say, why didn't I let know? We were told we would have a chance.
Do you feel that people have not had a chance? Do you
I
feel
don't
like
think people know. I don't think people know about it. How would they know?
well, it's been pretty much on every agenda since last October.
There's been
So
some
that
work
we
over
would
there.
have a final plat approval tonight?
No, but it's been on every agenda since then. I have not personally had any concerns or any calls since we've held cottage meetings and allowed people to vocalize their
I meant
concerns.
the concerns have died down quite a bit, and the majority of people that had concerns probably don't anymore, but we basically said, calm down.
Right.
It's not the final thing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
It
they
looks
don't
like.
have any warning, and it's done.
So the question I have
Excuse me, actually, Eileen, do you have any issues?
With the plat itself?
Yes.
No.
Phil, do you have any questions or concerns with the plat itself? Okay, great. So I think we're,
Jeff has comments.
yeah, we're, as it is right now, the plat itself, we feel has been scrutinized and has been reviewed by our engineer, by our staff, by our internal team pretty well.
Mhm.
Okay. With that out of the way, now we're getting into the issue of legality of if we can or cannot pass this through our ordinance tonight. It's not a matter of was this done correctly. You know, I will disagree with you, Gary, that it says final plat approval, no one's here. What other step do you feel will need to happen to get people here? To go and tell them, hey, we're going to discuss this. Do we need to put door hangers out and say, come to the city council because we're going to approve it?
So let me give you an example. The last time we had mails, letters mailed to us talking about the rezone ordinance. Mine was post stamped 3 days after our meeting and arrived, or post stamped 3 days after the meeting and arrived 4 days after the meeting to my house.
Okay.
So in that way, I didn't really get a letter telling me. It was just because I'm part of city council and I saw the things posted that would indicate that.
Okay.
And because people were aware and talking in the neighborhood, they alerted each other. And that's how people knew. That's how they felt included.
Okay. So at this point in time, with all the discussions that have been had, how do you feel that people need to be notified that final plat is going before the city council be approved?
Maybe possibly a letter saying that it's going to be pushed forward, pushed through.
Okay.
Some way of informing them, whether it's, we could even put it on the city website, we could put it on, Facebook, we can, any avenue that we have to communicate.
Can I ask a question? If we are dealing, as according to the staff report, phase 1, what happens next? What's the timeline?
For Bear Canyon, how far are we on Bear Canyon getting
To
approved?
say final plat approval for the entire thing, what are we looking at?
Well, the entire thing, I mean, they've got multiple phases.
Let's just talk about Bear Canyon, the crossing. How long is it going to be? How far out are we from getting approval from?
About 60 days before we have the target.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know for sure. There's some permits that they need to get, but the construction is going to take a significant amount of time. So
We want it in front of you in 60 days because we want to start putting it in this fall when there's no water coming down the streams. We're going to push it pretty hard. We're very close, maybe 60.
Okay.
So that's just for the Bear Creek crossing. You'll if you look on the plat, you can see that there's a lot of areas where it talks about future development and other things like that. Some of the lots that have some more geotechnical type issues to be resolved, when those are addressed, then they'll bring back subsequent plats. There could be, 2, 3, 4 more phases depending on when they get those done. But they wanted to be able to get, the roads.
But utilities are coming across Bear Canyon from 1800. We need
yes.
We have to have those or we can't sell.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying, is that we don't, until they get all of the approvals for that, they won't actually be installing those, but that needs to be part of phase 1. So everything else, Bear Canyon or Bear Creek Crossing is maybe 10% of the work to be done. So I think what they're asking is, can we start on the rest?
So what's the problem? Since we have concerns about the process, which I think is going to come back and bite us if we don't handle it properly. If we have a public hearing at phase 2, people are going to say, well, what happened to phase 1? What harm do we have if we have this public hearing for the final plat, phase 1, or we ask, I guess you're asking the planning commission to do that.
What I'm hearing is that we don't need to have a public hearing for phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 10 to 12 to whatever. We don't have to have a public hearing.
And we also don't have to have it approved by ordinance, according to our ordinances.
So the law changed in 2019. And so that's what I'm trying to see. There is some discrepancy in our powers and duties book too. So it would probably be just really good to get our attorney on board with making sure that we are doing this correctly, because it is a big subdivision and we don't want someone filing suit against the city for not following every little thing. And it does look like there is some discrepancy as to where and when and which and why and how on subdivision versus the actual rezone ordinance and the actual, preliminary agreement that we were working on. Those are my concerns. I think the subdivision actually looks good. And
If you held a public hearing, like, would you feel more comfortable holding a public hearing at the city council level?
no, I think you do it at planning commission level. But I think I'm kind of Gary in that I feel like people need a chance to get their last say in. And if we make sure that we notify them, if nobody shows up, nobody shows up. But it's just, I know it's not easy to hold public hearings. It requires work to do that. But I'm just concerned because it talks in here about in 2019 and so there's, like I said, there's some discrepancies. We know that our ordinance was enacted long before 2019. And the state came in and made some new ordinances in 2019. And in our powers and duties book, it says the minimum that we can do is what the state says that we have to do, no matter what our ordinance says.
So I just checked 2 cities, Salt Lake City, Riverton City. Preliminary plat approval is held by public hearing, not final.
And was there preliminary plat approval at the time?
We did it. Yes.
In February.
Yes.
But remember, we kept telling them, this is not the final, this is not the final. You will have an opportunity. We did say that. We did, as little as my memory doesn't work. I do remember quelling the crowds and saying, you will have an opportunity, this is not the final. And I don't know, I feel I'm being swayed. I feel like the process is going to become really important at some point in this. And if we can't handle it at the onset, at the beginning, then we're going to be facing it later on. Although I want us to hurry on with the project, what can we do to create that public awareness at the beginning rather than in the middle?
Okay. So at this point, I would look for a motion. I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the final plat approval for the Rockloft Ridge Estate.
Thank you.
I'm going to second that in respect to the planning commission's support, that they were unaware of the ordinance changes, so I'll second it.
And there's so many discrepancies here as I'm reading it. It's just really difficult to.
So can I actually have you amend your motion and state that it would be in line with the staff report? The improvement, what'd you call it, Jones?
The improvement plans.
The improvement plans, because that very clearly states that they have the right to make improvements to the land, but they cannot sell anything until final plat is approved and certified, what is it called? Recorded.
Do you also want to say that it's phase 1?
He did.
Yes.
He did say that. Because that's what we're talking about. It's not on the agenda, but it's the staff report says phase 1.
Perfect.
So
I move to approve phase 1 of the final plat approval for Rockloft.
Subject
to
Staff recommendations.
the staff recommendations.
I second that motion.
So I have a motion from George and a second from Diane. Any further discussions, any further comments about that motion? Okay. All in favor of approving the motion that's on the table to approve phase 1 of the Rockloft Ridge Estates in line with staff recommendations? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Abstaining.
Okay, so that passes 3-2. Moving on to item number 6.2, review, discuss, approve, deny 650 North interlocal agreement with Davis County and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District. Brandon Green, do you want to get the microphone?
I got it.
Thanks.
These two agreements that you have in front of you are for the capital project that we're doing on 650 North. It's all, well, 650 North and Quail Ridge Drive. Let's talk about the Davis County interlocal or agreement. The road 650 North is actually owned by the county. They are going to participate in the repaving of 650 North, but in addition to that, we will be installing curb gutter and a storm drain just above Chris Christensen's home. And that will extend east to the gate that leads up to the gun range. So that's what that agreement is. It also states what they will be paying for. They're paying 100% of the cost for the curb and gutter and the road rebuild up from Chris Christensen's home, or approximately that location. Up
Can you repeat that, Brandon? Sorry, say it again. Who is going to be paying for that 100%?
Davis County is going to be going to be paying 100% of the cost for the curb gutter and storm drain from approximately Chris Christensen's home east to the gun range gate.
For those of you who don't know who Chris Christensen is that log cabin that's the final house.
You could also say it's the city boundary.
Yeah, the boundary.
Everything is in the city boundary.
In addition to that, on Quail Ridge Drive, Weber Basin is going to be installing a secondary water line in the road. They will be paying for that, but they will be using our contractor to install that. So while we're in there replacing our water and storm drain, Weber Basin, this contractor will be installing a new secondary water line. Once all of that work is done, Quail Ridge will be repaved and 650 North will be repaved. The city is paying for the entire repaving of Quail Ridge. And we're sharing the cost in 650 North from Mountain Road to the east to the city boundary with Davis County. Did I state that all correctly?
So then Davis County is taking it from
the boundary
up to the gun
up
range.
to the gun range gate.
Great.
Will there be sidewalk on either side of that road?
Past the city boundary?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Will there be sidewalk within the city boundary?
Yes.
But the sidewalk is actually part of the development that,
Joe Christensen is doing.
yeah,
But years ago,
yes.
at this point.
Yes, it's not installed. We have escrow money, but
Is that going to be installed as part of the lots being built on, or is it going to be?
That's
Yeah, one lot is not going to be built on.
yeah, it has to be done in
It has to
order
be done.
for him to get his escrow money back, or we'll go and do it. But it's outside of the construction that's proposed, so
It's outside, okay.
yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be done before this project.
Okay.
So Davis County would be sharing 50% of the road from Mountain Road to the city boundary, 100% of everything past the city boundary. And the project that was awarded to Wardell Brothers included the design for all of that and their costs. These agreements are being brought before you to make it official, as far as like the cost reimbursement element of that.
So I think Eileen may have just asked the same question, so forgive me if she did.
That's okay.
There's those lots below Chris Christensen that are just being developed.
This is not part of that project.
Right, but do they already have, I know it's not part of this project. Do they already have sewer and electric run to them so that
Yes.
we're not digging that back up?
Yes, all of the improvements or the service lines for those lots was already installed back when they were tearing up the road. So all of that's in. I mean, that's a good concern to have, but it has been addressed.
There is a proposal right now to rezone 2 of those lots to multifamily, which would then change the location and the size of the water lines that are running into the existing, if you know where the existing Christensen home is. The proposal is to demo that down and build some condos. That's being looked at right now at the planning commission.
Demo the existing home.
Demo the existing white home, Christensen home,
Oh,
not the log home,
okay,
but the white one that's down near the condos.
okay.
And that's being looked at right now. So we're working through that process.
Great.
And we have a public hearing scheduled for next Tuesday on that.
So essentially, these agreements would say that those entities, Weber Basin and Davis County, will pay for their parts of the project.
So in essence, the only reason why it's happening is because we're all using the same contractor.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, we do not want multiple contractors in there trying to figure out who's doing what. So it makes the most sense to just have one contractor do it, and then everybody pays their part.
Great. Thank you, Brandon and Brandon. With that, do I have a motion on the table?
Go ahead.
I move that we accept the 650 North interlocal agreement with Davis County Weber Basin Water Conservancy District.
Great. Thank you, Flo. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second from Flo and from Gary. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the 650 North interlocal agreement with Davis County and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 7, which is to review and approve the minutes from June 14th. Any comments on those minutes? If not, I'd look for a motion to approve the minutes.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Will.
What's happened to Amy?
Amy has,
Good job.
she has retired from being our assistant recorder.
Do we need someone, or is it going to be done a different way, or what?
No, we're gonna need somebody.
Looks like we'll need someone.
We're working on it.
Okay. I move that we accept the minutes from June 14th minutes.
I actually think you need to say we need to approve.
I'm getting used to this.
I make a motion to approve.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for that day, for June 22nd.
June 14th.
14th, 2022.
Thank you, Flo. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Eileen. Any comments? All in favor of approving the minutes from June 14th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Motion carries. Moving on to 24th, informational items.
Consent calendar? No?
There's nothing on the consent calendar, sorry. 24th of July, the office is closed, staff have the day off. Planning Commission on the 26th, City
Is
Council.
it the 24th or off Monday?
We're off on Monday, the
Monday,
25th.
the 25th.
So the 25th is what you should specify.
Bugger, 5th.
Thank you.
Planning Commission on the 26th, City Council on August 2nd. August 16th is our truth and taxation hearing. Are there any here that will not be able to attend the 16th of August? Great. So
State law also, now state law requires that the only thing that can be discussed on that night is truth and taxation. So there won't be anything else on the agenda other than that.
great.
I have a question. How are we going to let everybody know about that?
They will know.
They will
The
know.
state, the county has sent out and will be sending out all the taxation information showing and notifying everyone of our truth and taxation hearing. Right, Brandon?
It's only required to be published in the newspaper. Under state law, there's very, very specific requirements of how that's to be published. It will be in the newspaper. The city will also be letting people know that there will be a public hearing for truth and taxation. It will be on our social media, and that same advertisement that we produce for the newspaper will be put on our website.
Could we, for future reference, is there a reason why? I really like the website, the state's website for public notices, and everything I've read always says you must use the state's public website for notices. Is it possible we make it just standard practice for our city that every time we need a public notice, we do use that website? Because I subscribe to it and get the notifications from it, and I like those. I subscribe.
Can
to
we
it.
refer people to that on our city website?
We just make that an expectation.
A big deal, make it a big deal on the website.
Stick to that.
What's it called? I want to look for it.
Public notice website.
The
Probably.
Utah Public Notice website.
Thank you.
Utah.gov/PMN.
Hold on.
I have another question about communications as long as we're on it. I know there's a city Twitter account. Could we use that? Does anybody in the city use?
Most people use Facebook, they don't use Twitter, and Twitter doesn't really allow you to upload as much language to the tweet as Facebook allows you to do. It's a very limited amount of text that you can put on a tweet.
Thank you. City council reports. I'll go first. I have spoken with Brandon as well as Diane. We have a couple of planning commission members who have have gone beyond their time. The plan is to replace both of them between now and the end of the year. The idea would be to replace Sam Brady, who's done a great job. He's been on longer than his term. And then we would call or appoint a new chair and ask Curtis Tanner to stay on for a few more months while the new chair is getting up to speed, and then replace Curtis Tanner, who's extended his time by a few months as well, or by a year. I've talked to both. I've not talked to Sam, but I've talked to Curtis, and he was in favor of doing something along those lines. Just letting you know, the city will be pushing out and asking for applications, but if you know anyone in either of those areas, which is the north of Bear Canyon, west of 89, which is Sam Brady's area, or north of Bear Canyon, east of 89, both of those districts are going to be replacing people. Is that right?
And if Curtis Tanner's already passed his term by a year,
Both of them are by like a year and a half.
because it should be June to June.
Yes.
Is there a third one that's also then, there should be somebody up almost every year, right?
It's two,
It should be two one time and then everybody
Well,
else
I've appointed all four of those. Excuse me, I've appointed all three of the ones who are existing in the last 4 years.
okay,
But they're 2-year terms with an possible of two more year terms.
so
3-year terms. They're 3-year terms.
So my question is, have you made that official to extend those 3-year terms another 3 years? Because there should be somebody up about every year.
Yes.
Well, Carrie Carroll is in her first term,
Brian Bear is his third year.
third year,
Kevin
and
Paulson's
then Kevin Paulson's just new, just within the last year.
It's those two that have been on for almost 12 years, haven't they?
9 years is the limit?
No, I think 12 years is the limit.
9 years is the limit?
9 years is the limit. Because they're on the 10. So if you can keep that in mind, City Council, George Ray. Actually, before I go on, I want to publicly thank the public responders for Kaysville City and how the tragedy on the 4th of July was handled. I thought Kaysville did a very good job, very professional in the way they handled that situation. And George, as the liaison with that, I really do appreciate all that you did and all that Kaysville did to handle that. Thank you.
And it sounds bad to say I had an enjoyable time that day up until the moment of finding about that tragedy. So
Yes.
I really appreciate everybody's participation in the breakfast and the parade. It was enjoyable the time we had. So thanks for
Actually,
being there.
I will second that. That's awesome.
Unsung Heroes. The devotional before was amazing. Sunday night was awesome. So the whole thing was really good.
Do you have anything to add?
Not at the moment.
Excellent, Diane.
I need to announce that we're going to cancel Founder's Day due to city manager and staff recommendation issues. We're sorry about that. After 16 plus years, this is the first year we're not having it. But I've talked to the Founder's Day chair and they're fine with it. I think they were on their way out anyway, but we've Brandon sent them an appreciation and just to let them know it's not their fault. We're doing it. It's just kind of circumstances beyond our control. So there will be no fireworks. There will be no run this year, but next year. And I also wanted to say, I don't know if you as residents got this, I'm gonna pass this down, but the Mountain Road Church put flyers, and I'm on the west side of 89, to invite us to a community block party this Friday from 5:30 to 7:30, which is interesting that they're having a big community festivity, and I wonder if some of us would be interested in showing up and attending and supporting. I think that was a cool thing.
Thank you, Diane.
Oh, there was one more thing for me too. The YCC is currently in their application period. So if you know anybody in the high school age group that needs opportunity for service, invite them to apply for the YCC.
Actually, let me take one more stab at that. If you know neighbors or anyone, please, like, it's a great opportunity to learn. And they have a lot of fun. It's a great opportunity. So if you have any neighbors of neighbors or friends or anyone you know, please have them apply. It's worth the time, and they need some good people to step up. Applications are due by the 31st of this month. Thanks. Gary.
You guys have covered the 4th of July, so that's great. One thing that I would like to just bring up is I'm grateful for all the fire departments that responded to that fire in the middle of the night. I thought they did a fantastic job of responding very quickly. I talked to my neighbor that called it in. He said they were there within minutes, which was fantastic. Also, I wanted to suggest that maybe we go meet our current fire provider, go take a tour of their facilities, meet the staff, meet the fire chief, sometime in the near future. I think I felt like that was a great experience with Kaysville.
I'm working on that right now with Farmington.
Awesome.
They're in the middle of some staffing issues, so right now is not a good time, but
Yeah, it's fine. It's just
we're working on that.
if we can think about doing that when it makes sense, then that'd be awesome.
Great. I like that. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. I was going to say, Brandon, are you going to, because Gary is over service, are you going to talk about the service project? Okay. Eileen.
In regards to the fire, frequently in the past, we have had the emergency preparedness at CCC, Citizen Court Council, meet with some of the responders and talk about what went right. It certainly seemed like this and what went wrong. It certainly seemed like this time many things went right. There were many responding agencies. So I wondered if that was going to happen. There was going to be that chance to get those responders together and talk about. It just seemed like, from everything I heard, so our area coordinator responded with making phone calls as she knew of, and making sure people were on alert to evacuate as needed. She was in touch with the first responders that were there. And so I'm wondering if we need to reach out to Lisa Ward and to Mary Monson and to some of those responders and just talk about how that was coordinated and learn from it.
I will work with Flo and Brandon to make sure that happens.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Finances, how are we looking? Good. Flo.
We're good.
We did have a meeting with the CCC and we were grateful, but I like the idea of meeting with them. And there's been talk about whether and how to update the website or on emergency preparedness, or what's the best way to help our citizens so that in case of another fire or obviously emergency that we can help them be better prepared. If you have any suggestions, we'd love to hear it. what works, what doesn't, how do we communicate? So we're talking about these things with Mary and I've talked to Brandon and some of the others about it, so we're working on it.
Thank you so much, Flo. Brandon Jones,
Yes, sir.
do you have anything to add to our meeting?
I do not.
Jeff Euler, do you have anything to add?
Eileen, I'm gonna research your questions, and then I'm gonna call you, and then we'll report back at the next council meeting.
Thank you. And looking at this, I mean, it's a little bit ambiguous in here. What constitute the actual subdivision? Was that at the time of the rezone? Was that when the subdivision was formed?
I don't have to look, so let me do some research, and then you and I will discuss it on the phone.
Thank you.
And then we'll report back.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do just want to make one statement. I did text.
Brad?
These things are pieces of junk. I did text the city attorney, and the city attorney said that the subdivision was, the public hearing was only required at the rezone, and we held a public hearing, and that's when the subdivision
Was formed?
started the process. Now, Jeff, and I agree with Jeff, we'll go through that whole process, but been talking to the city attorney, and his understanding of, because we've worked with him through this whole process to make sure that we've done what we're supposed to. His understanding is the only public hearing that was required was the rezoning from A1 to R112, which established a subdivision of R112.
Can I-
I'll call you about it.
I appreciate that, Brandon. It's difficult to keep track of the different ordinance changes in state law and different
That
things.
is absolutely.
And I just want to make sure we're absolutely on the right page so that there's no fallback. And then the other thing is that I do feel like it never hurts to have a public hearing, even if we're not required to have a public hearing.
That's true.
And that's fine. Getting information out is fine. We're not trying to withhold any information from our residents. As Mayor Pullman stated, we have met several times with many of the residents up there. Me personally have taken residents in my vehicle up there and walked the site to help them understand what is going on up there. So there may be some people that don't know what's going on, but if they don't know what's going on, it's because they haven't made an effort to know what's going on. There's been opportunities provided to them to get information.
There was such an uproar when this thing happened, and we kept saying, as Diane mentioned, but it's not the final plat approval. And
There is an uproar every time somebody wants to do something on their property. We experienced that 2 weeks ago with what Mr. Christensen wants to do.
every change.
Yeah,
But this is,
change.
this is a considerable change. I think this is worth to.
So is the single lot in somebody's backyard that used to be a field,
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
This is what you should feel good about. This is exactly what you want at this city council meeting when you are faced with final plat approval. The only people in this room are the people doing the project. We sat in packed rooms numerous times at the planning commission where people marched up here time after time, both in favor and against this. And those issues were resolved over a period of time. When you get to this point right here, this is exactly what we want to see. This room isn't packed with people that are mad. The only people left are the people that want to start the work.
The problem is, did those people know? So we want to avoid
They
them
don't
coming
know,
next time. and
they may
saying,
not know that you're approving the final plat tonight, but they have had multiple opportunities to speak their piece.
I
And most
totally,
of them have.
I totally agree with you. It's just that we've said multiple times, this is not the final thing. Just calm down. It's not the final thing.
We did.
You'll have your
yes.
chance. You'll have your chance.
And Jeff, is it possible, when you do discover that information, would you let me know in case I need to do anything with the planning commission before our next meeting to comply?
Brad's already given his opinion, I suspect we're.
Yeah, I suspect we're beyond that point.
it's gonna be a written opinion. I don't wanna just state it over mic. This is through.
Via text, come on. man.
Yeah,
That'd be a written statement from our city attorney, so.
Darren, do you have anything?
I'm just gonna tell, we're doing our part of water conservation, you can see our parks and stuff there. Around, we try to water them, once a week in the different areas. Areas that require a lot more around the playground, the Boweries, we try to water twice a week. So as a city, on that aspect, we're trying to do our part, set an example for individuals. That, live in a drought, that's what we're supposed to. 1800 East is really bumped up their water usage. During June, I was pumping maybe once or twice a week. Over the last 2 weeks, I pump every day before that tank is empty. So, because it's hot. So
And are they following our ordinance as to how much they can water?
There's people watering probably every day, because it even gets empty on the weekends. I happened to fill it up on Saturday, because I was hoping to be filled for the 4th of July. I came in that morning on 4th of July, was empty, so I know they watered.
So aren't,
Over the weekend, so.
aren't some houses on Saturday, but maybe not up there?
Up there, it's not. We've sent out a letter. We've asked them not to water on Wednesday and not to water on the weekends.
But in other, like in Hayes Creek areas, it is on Saturday.
Yeah, Hayes Creek does have a Saturday. So,
Our,
and Benchland has even different.
Yeah, I wonder, did they get a different letter?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. So there's no confusion.
So there's no,
Okay.
so,
Hey, Darren, where are we as a city on water usage? Culinary and our culinary.
so as our culinary, we'll be fine. We contract with enough water.
But we were asked to cut back by 10%. Are we going to meet
We
that?
will make 10%. So,
Is it possible to get those numbers so we just know?
and as far as where we're at,
Like, are we at 5 or 6 or 11 or 12?
I didn't bring my computer. I can actually send out and tell you where we are in percentage for the year. I just got the report 2 days ago. I can't remember what percentage.
Is UDOT still using as much of our water as they were? Or is
Yeah,
that?
it's still using quite a bit of our water. Yeah. So,
Would you like to give it?
but we meter it and we charge them.
And we can subtract that usage out of the,
Oh,
Use after that, using
Okay.
what we're comparing. So,
okay, so that's not included in.
no.
Good.
So,
Can we increase our rate to you up?
if you want to write a new contract with them,
Okay, guess that's past now. Can you give us a UDOT update, please? By the way, that's a nice looking shirt. You look nice.
they will be closing northbound tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. To get on 89 here at Cherry Hill. So that'll be detoured, that'll be closed for 6 weeks. And they're working down in the hollow. They've got some of the pipe installed. They're getting ready to start the structure. So that's continued. There'll be hauling in dirt on the east side where the pedestrian walkway comes out to widen that out, make it more usable to be able to come up towards green room and stuff like that. So that's where we're at. They're wanting to shift traffic, probably the middle to end of August, off the frontage road and down on southbound 89.
And where does the bridge stand? It looked like it's standing still.
It is standing still at the moment. I haven't got a
Concrete?
It's gotta be concrete.
definite answer of where it's at. They still say, by the,
Late
And
summer
then-
is what they were saying.
yeah, by the end of the late summer, and I don't know if they're considering that, it'll be ready. I know one thing that they have to store enough concrete that they can pour it all at one time, so.
that may be what delays the
And
work.
so, they may have, okay, we're not gonna have concrete for this time, let's do some of these other projects. And then when we have no contract, we'll make sure we're ready for those.
And I just said, I like the sound bowl. It's been kind of nice. I like the improvements. I like an interchange. I'm looking forward to Nichols being done.
Yes.
Brandon, do you have anything?
I've been contacted by the Fruit Heights City Stake. They are interested in doing another day of service on 9/10 instead of 9/11, because 9/11 is on a Sunday. So I will be working with the stake in outlining some potential projects, service projects. If you remember last year, we did a bunch of work down at the Gailey Trail at Nichols Park, very successful. And we'll be doing some other things, which may include the Gailey Trail. But if you have some thoughts or ideas on some service projects that may be beneficial for the community as a whole, I'd be happy to take note of any of those projects that you think might be beneficial. I've got a list of 5 projects right now that I've worked with Darren and talked to Darren about. And
Will
those are
there be
just some-
mulch? Will there be mulch provided for the path
mulch provided for the path?
or witches?
Yeah, I mean, if that's one of the projects that they want to do, I'm just trying to get a group of projects together, and then I guess there's a committee that's gonna kind of discuss them, and decide what they'd be willing to help with, and then we'll further go from there.
Do we, as a city, do we end up buying wood mulch, or are we getting it from Mass Pond when they do the trimmings?
Wasatch Integrated Waste has been very good in allowing or donating or giving us mulch. Depending on how much they have will depend on their willingness to give. So in years past, they've had a lot to donate.
They've had a rough time this year because the water construction, they need a lot of water in order to make the mulch and compost. And so their spring was horrific and they didn't have very much. They should be ramping up, and by fall, when the water, secondary water runs out, Layton City should be able to provide them with some water. So they should be able to have enough for next spring, but they've had a hard time this year. They've got wood chips galore, they've got supplies, endless supplies, but they can't turn into mulch without the water.
Don't we use wood chips still in the trail water instead of mulch?
We use the smaller chip mulch. The wood chips are too big. You can't the ladies can't push their strollers on them. We've had complaints about that.
Can't work on it very well.
Excellent, thank you. That concludes our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion
Second
from
that.
second Eileen, second from Diane. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Thank you, staff. Thank you all, you people, for coming.
18.